Hello, fellow Pops. I'm Dr. F Scott Feil, and I'm bringing you a message from our sponsor at Ice Shaker. My diet's always been a little bit messed up most of my life, and I recently started trying to take back control of my health. And one of the issues my doctor pointed out was that I needed to make an increase in my protein intake. Now, I can't eat chicken breasts all day, every day, so protein shakes and powders have become a big help. Ice Shaker and its built-in removable agitator is an amazing product. They come in a bunch of sizes and colors, and you can even get inscriptions and logos on them. They're stainless steel, double wall insulated, and hold ice for 30 plus hours. If you're interested in purchasing one, you can click on the link in our show notes. Or if you're interested in selling them for your business and making commission, and let's be honest, if you're listening to the Professors of Profit Vlogcast and you can consider yourself a pop or a professor of profit, you're likely interested in selling these as a side hustle. You can click on that link in the show notes as well. Or you can reach out to me directly on social media. I'm pretty available there. I love Ice Shaker, and I'm betting you, your patients, and your clients will too. Ice Shaker, let's shake things up. Now let's start the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Professors of Profit Vlogcast. I'm your host, Dr. F Scott Feil, and I've got with me today a very special guest who is actually doing a side gig and side hustle that's near and dear to my heart. Being an English major, editing has always been just something that we do. So I have with me today Sarah Cruser. Sarah, tell us a little bit about your journey and how it's led you to where you're at today.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. My journey is pretty varied. I started out as an arts major with a bachelor's of arts in dance and did a lot of liberal arts within that. So sort of cultural studies, history, analytic stuff like that. That was kind of career number one before going back to PT school as a second career a little bit later on. But all of that process has always stuck with me. So I've worked in a lot of different settings within PT, very kind of diverse exposure. And the one thing I've seen consistently throughout is just lots of people trying to promote businesses, write books, develop course content. And I'm always that person that feels like, gosh, if you just said A, B, or C, it would make so much more sense. Or when someone asks a question in class, it's like, I understand what they're trying to get at and just want to tell the professor, hey, they're just trying to get at this point. And if you just said this, it would make a lot more sense. So I've tried to kind of combine that, both my understanding of a lot of people's areas that they work in with this kind of understanding of language, communication, as well as the creative process, kind of breaking things apart, putting them back together, not being afraid to reorganize, and sort of turned it into this kind of writing coach, editing business. That's a side hustle.
Yeah, I love that. And you hit on a lot of really good points there, right? Like one, as physical therapists, a lot of what we do is communication, right? There's a lot of patient education. There's a lot of things that we do that we have to get our point across and get patient buy-in and have them understand what it is that's going on and how we're going to try to address it, right? And I think, obviously being an English major, language was always pretty decent for me. Like it was a good way for me to interact with people and communicate, grow my communication skills through writing, through a lot of the creative process. And I think that's one thing that people don't recognize is that physical therapists in general are very creative, right? We adapt a lot of things. We adapt exercises, we adapt plans of care, we adapt equipment. We home settings, we do a lot of creative thinking and problem solving and adaptation. And, I think part of being, I don't want to say boxed in, but, part of being in a 9 to 5 or a typical clinical setting can actually drive creativity because it ends up making you think, all right, well, here's a current solution that I'm not terribly happy with. How can we make it better? How can we come up with a different way to approach this so that it is a win-win for everybody, And so I think a lot of therapists, whether they like to admit it or not, are looking for a creative outlet. They're looking for something to use their creative skills on. And it's cool that you can funnel it into an editing side gig and side hustle. So tell us a little bit about why you think physical therapists or professors or healthcare providers in general should consider maybe an editing side gig.
Sure. I think, for one, simply when somebody is working on a written product, having an outside perspective from the field to look at it is extremely valuable. Anytime, if you've ever written anything yourself or worked on even, a PowerPoint or a lecture or something, it's really easy to get tied down in it, and you read it yourself and it makes sense to you because you've read it 100 of times. But having someone with clinical experience in a particular area can look at someone's written product from that perspective and really give a lot of insight into what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So from a kind of content perspective, that's invaluable. And then, we have a lot of us have master's or doctoral level degrees. So your general writing skills are there to sort of see point A to point B to point C. Whether you feel comfortable with kind of the nitty gritty of proofreading just takes a little bit of extra training. But the rest of it is well within your skill set to sort of see the language and intervene.
Yeah. And I would, even being an English major, I still have a lot of my stuff edited because, like you said, it's good to get that outsider's point of view and that perspective, right? But I think also, one of the things that I think we should be doing is trying to think outside of that box of just one-on-one treatment, right? One-to-one type treatment into more of that one-to-many type treatment, right? So how can we affect many people instead of just one person at a time, right? And writing a book or writing a blog or writing, some sort of information for the general public or for, our patients or for other clinicians and our peers, right? Writing to help and educate a bigger population of people is something that we should be doing, I think, as healthcare clinicians. So, I think it's important that we start thinking of other ways to, and it's not all about monetization. I think a lot of it is about having an impact, making a bigger impact. And what better way to do that? Like, you can't replicate yourself, right? So you might as well replicate your lessons and what you're teaching and what your knowledge and experience through a book or through a blog or through some sort of, writing. So I'm always a big proponent of that. I think everybody should write a book at some point in their life. It definitely tells their story, and I'm not just saying that because I'm an English major. I really do think that as clinicians, even, we have a lot to tell, a lot of education, a lot of tips, clinical pearls, things that we've learned through our experiences, and I think they should be shared. So, I hope people will listen to this and get inspired to write and or edit and help other clinicians with their goals and their writing. What are some tips or tricks or pointers that you found along the way when it comes to editing in general or a side gig in editing?
Yeah, I mean, the business side of it, right? I mean, I'm pretty small potatoes, right? I'm not doing a lot of self-marketing or anything like that. Because for me, I like it small, right? One kind of project every 4 to 6 months or so is exactly right for me. But I still had to figure out all of the, billing and communication and things like that. And so for me, getting organized was step number one. I tend to not be very organized with my electronic life. But I created, an editing contract so that it's really clear what the expectations are, who owns what, how to credit me if you are crediting me. I created an intake form, and this has been really helpful with a current project that I'm on, where I make sure on an intake phone call to ask things like, what's your feedback style that you like? Do you want a lot of words? Do you want just a roundup phone call after I've gone through stuff? Do you prefer a summary email? Do you want me to do edits as suggestions or directly in it? So finding out all of that kind of information ahead of time was really helpful, because everybody responds to a page full of metaphorical red ink, right? At this point, Google comments differently. And if you're not used to it, it can feel really overwhelming. So figuring out those details ahead of time, as well as kind of playing with my billing structure, was really helpful as well. And I did settle on kind of I bill hourly like an attorney would.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, again, the cool thing with this is you're setting expectations and letting the client know what to expect. And we do that as well in healthcare, right? We let our patients know, what to expect. And B, because it's something that you're creating and that you're solving a problem for somebody, right? They need some form of editing. You provide those services. and you're structuring it the way that fits best for you and your lifestyle and what you're looking for. So, again, I think a lot of people get scared and shied away about business in general and starting their own business and all this, when in reality, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be difficult. You can set it up to make it revolve around your lifestyle and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So I think if more people did that, they could see that the benefits are, far outweigh the cons. I think tax benefits alone are great with a small business, but it's nice to make a little extra money too. The big thing for me has always been like, all right, student loans are a huge issue. How can we address those? Right. Well, work your 9 to 5, have, your clinical job and do whatever you want to do with that, and let that kind of take care of your everyday and your house and your car and your family and food and clothes and all the bare necessities. And then if you have that side gig or side hustle, you can use that to either pay down the student loans and or invest and or have a little fun, go on a vacation, whatever. It's just it's a good strategy. Starting your own business, however big or small, is a good strategy. So
yeah, it's been great. And I like, the flexibility for me. This is another tip, right? Is I live in the Pacific Northwest where the winters are horrible and the summers are great. So I take projects in the winter, right? When I don't know what I'm going to do on the weekend because it's raining. Usually today's actually beautiful, right? But there's that flexibility. And the other kind of flexibility thing that I know I've been having to sort of hold true to, and we were chatting a little bit about this earlier, is that I get to choose what my skill set is within the editing. There are a lot of people doing just kind of the proofread, right? Send me the final product and I'll check it for grammar and punctuation. There are a lot of people doing copywriting and website content, and that's not my strength. So I focus in on more the content development, right? I hear what you're trying to say. This is how we could say it better. Consider reorganizing that part all the way through language through a final proofread, but I'm not going to help you with your website optimization, right? Because you won't get any hits. So it's nice to have that flexibility to really kind of focus in on what I like to do.
Yeah. And that's, I think, key with any small business starting out, especially, is niching down and knowing your strength and leaning all into it. I talk about having a zone of genius a lot, right? Like whatever you're really good at, like let's double down on that. Let's lean into that and just go with it. And if that's the only population of people that you help, so be it. That's great. Right. Help those people, help them well. Because again, like you said, if you do that, you don't end up having to market or having to spread the word too much because people are doing that for you. The word of mouth is helping out your network, and people who are looking for your services just, kind of seem to find you via the universe. The universe does amazing things when you do good work for people. So, well, Dr. Sarah Cruser, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for enlightening my audience about editing and how they can use that as a side gig and side hustle. Where can people find you if they want to follow up or just ask questions or see what you're up to these days?
Sure. I mean, I'm always open to a direct email if you have any questions. It's just sarah@sarahcruser.com. SARAHCRUSER. And I'm also on Twitter with @Sarah_Cruser, at least as long as it's around. So I'm still on there, and that's a really easy way to find me.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put all those links in the show notes so people can find you very easily. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.